Thank you, Rhonda. Welcome back to Visual Management Module number 2, Optimizing Your Workflow. Those who were turned into Webinar 1 and those who are first-time listeners, we're welcoming you back to Webinar 2. Many of you are on a lean continuous process improvement journey, some just starting, some well along. As I said in Webinar 1, lean continuous improvement is based on 2 pillars, the identification and elimination of waste, and secondly, the full utilization of human talent. That is, building processes to expose waste and creating people who are willing and able to eliminate that waste. Visual management is the intersection of these 2 pillars, exposing waste and creating people who are willing and able to eliminate it. The essence of lean continuous improvement is about people, and so is visual management. It's about believing employees have the right to be successful every time they do their job, and that we never want to waste an operator's time needlessly. And if the art of doing their job is finding problems and making improvements, then we as managers and leaders, if we want people to be successful, we have to help them find problems and make improvements. We have to provide them the means to do so. And the best way to do that is visual management, making it easier to see problems, easier to solve problems, and easier to learn from mistakes. Today we want to talk about optimizing the workflow. Visual management is about building a problem-solving methodology, as we mentioned, and it starts with optimizing your workflow, which means each and every employee can see the flow of value to the customer and fix it when it breaks before it reaches the customer. The reason we're starting here is because when you focus on discrete resource points in your organization, your costs will go up, always. Only when you focus on the end-to-end workflow, on the entire process, will your costs go down, always. And so we want to make sure all of our visual management elements are optimizing the entire workflow. So let's make sure our visual management system is well planned and focused on improving the business performance. Because when we're focused on the bottom line, on the operational and financial gain, on the customer, it becomes very sustainable. My personal experience is that most companies start with visual management and lean, introducing it to the manufacturing organization, and some quick wins and gains using common tools out on the shop floor are made. Lots of training, lots of tools, lots of mapping. However, the effort eventually gets bogged down since it requires support from other functions and other parts of the hierarchy as the implementation process moves to the next level. The reason it fizzles is because it's not focused on solving real bottom line business problems, and it doesn't show up on the bottom line. It's not tightly woven with the customer's needs and the business strategy. Witness how difficult it is to sustain things like 5S. But at the end of the day, if you are not reducing your costs doing lean, if you're not reducing your costs doing visual management, you're not doing visual management. Jeffrey Liker, a prolific researcher on lean, and Mike Rother, who has done extensive research in the Toyota management practices, claimed that only 2% of companies that have a lean program have achieved their anticipated results. And Cliff Ranson, the vice president at State Street Research in Boston, one of the few stock analysts who analyze manufacturing companies through a lean lens, states in AME's Target magazine that very few companies have advanced with lean manufacturing until you can see the results financially, perhaps 1 or 2% at best. Another 2 or 3% are getting there. Okay, but not outstanding. Another 10 or 15% mostly just talk lean. And the majority, 80% or so, don't even have the buzzwords right. As my colleague Rhonda will tell you, if you are not visual, you are not lean. And if you're not cutting costs, you are not doing lean. Optimizing the workflow means focusing on the cash-to-cash cycle. Whenever you work on the workflow, as I said, your costs go down. However, whenever you work on discrete resources, your costs go up. And you can only do this focus on the entire workflow by giving workers real control of production operations and manufacturing operations, only by building quick feedback loops. Only in this way can workers control and fix what's going on, producing what their customer wants when they want it. And thus, the only way to get that quick feedback loop is through visual management, real-time response. Only producing those products, visual management or optimizing your workflow means only producing those products which you can make and quickly dispatch and invoice to the customer. Only making for the next operation those components you need to assemble or complete the next operation. It means minimizing the material throughput time and using the shortest planning period and the smallest run quantity, which can be efficiently managed. And only taking deliveries from suppliers in small batches as and when needed. All our visual management is focusing on these elements of optimizing your workflow. Again, just to recap our vision of where we're going with visual management, we want to focus on safety first, followed by throughput, putting more through the process pipe and out the back door. We want to shorten the time from customer request to fulfillment, and we want to get productivity gains by getting that throughput and time reduction with the same asset or investment base. And for operating expense, we want no red ink waste. We want to eliminate it. And as I said, most importantly, these 5 success factors are in deliberate sequence. Safety first, operating expense last. Remember, our visual management is all about enabling a problem-solving culture. What we want to emphasize in this webinar and in webinar 3 is the segment on process improvement, which is about exposure of problems, things that get in the way of work or disruptions to the flow of the value to the customer or the next person or operation in the process. Properly made visual, a visitor could determine if the process is on time to perform its requirements without asking any questions, requesting any reports, or looking at any computer printouts. And this is where we're going to start today. Let's go to process improvement, identification, documentation, and measurement of process, because visual management's a problem-solving framework, as we've been saying, exposing and countermeasuring problems. So it becomes critical that we define what a problem is. And we're going to define a problem as a variance from our standard. Although most visual management initiatives start with workplace structure, or 5S, we believe essentially that making things visible and optimizing workflow, we have to have a picture of what that workflow will look like, so as to make it operationally and financially impactful and sustainable, and not part of the 95 or 98% Ransom, Leiker, and Rother reference. Again, we have 3 sub-elements of process improvement. Identify the process standard, the normal condition. Document the workflow and make visible the normal condition, including teaching the standard, the work instructions. And measure the variance from the standard or abnormalities, their type, their frequency, and their severity. So optimizing the workflow is all about setting the standard and exposing deviations from that standard, so we've defined a problem that we can solve. We're building a visual self-diagnostic capability. In this particular picture, we're visually on the left planning 20 batches of product or 50 pallets per day. That's the standard work in sequence from the top to the bottom. In terms of flexibility, if we want to build a hot order, we move it into an earlier slot and repeat as required. And at the end, we count the pallets as they pass the counter. In this case, we've done 5 so far. Let me look at the use of this process. In this case, we're using tubs as Kanbans to pull from the tub mixer to the filling or packaging line. And so we've established a process that goes like this: from the tub mixers, through the packing presses, through a wash tub, and back into feeder mix. So it's always going in the same flow. This visual management capability reduced our in-service tubs or inventory from 12 to 13, almost 50%, and dramatically cleared tub congestion on the floor, reducing risk in terms of safety and quality issues. The workflow identification has 4 critical elements: see, sort, organize, and maintain. See is about scanning or visually observing, directly observing the process. We call this a process walk or a value walk or a treasure hunt, and it provides the raw material needed to take and expose waste points and thus provide improvement action through visual management. Sort defines what's required to fulfill the customer's expectation and then separate the necessary from the unnecessary. Organize, place that which survived to the sort in an orderly manner, easy to use for everyone, and arrange the workplace to ensure safety, quick retrieval visibility, efficiency, and effectiveness. And lastly, maintain. Establish a work environment that is visually controlled and easy to identify the normal from the abnormal conditions. Create a visual work area in order to understand the current conditions and determine if and where corrective action is required. So let's go identify your process. Let's identify your workflow, starting with C. Process improvement requires us to know our process. Knowing our process is the most important product you can innovate. Not just how you build things, but the mindset of building things, and more attention to what matters and less to what doesn't. It requires us to notice things in detail. Visual value stream mapping as a tool that lean people have developed, and I believe they've developed in terms of outsized importance in relation to the types of information workers need to understand their current and future states. I don't want workers spending too much time drawing value stream maps and getting managerial approval. In a process walk, we spend a few hours a day at most collecting our data. Value stream mapping purpose is as a strategic tool to educate top management. It doesn't usually help workers make process improvements. Value stream mapping shows the leader how messed up their processes are, perhaps, and what changes are needed to make measures, needed in measures, policies, and practices, and in how they treat people. Policies drive inventory, like standard cost accounting, and teach managers the need to be successful and what they have to do for a successful lean transformation. We need on the floor to eliminate waste, and we need people to do it, to get on with it. Let's not spend too much time planning and value stream mapping and not enough doing. I'm not undermining the importance of planning. Let's just do it visually through direct observation. Here we see the identification through our scanning exercise, where we are, where we want to be, and by what manner we want to get there. What is the problem? Where is it observed? What area is it in? Does each work area have the necessary tools to perform their operation? And is each item identified with a location and an address? Can new team members or visitors navigate the workplace without asking questions? Are cleaning tools, supplies clearly identified, easily retrievable? What about inventory? Are deviations from standard easily identified? Are material handling procedures clearly identified? Are tools and supplies labeled? Are quality samples and inspection tools and gauges and quality alerts located at point of use? What about work instructions? All of these things should be observed and collected through our seeing or direct observation or scanning exercise. What is less obvious when we're doing our scan is waste. Waste of overproduction, waste of waiting, waste of motion, waste of conveyance, waste of overprocessing, waste of inventory, waste of defects, waste of unevenness and unreasonableness. The critical waste that we've learned as lean experts. And what we're looking to do when we see these is reduce, eliminate, combine, and resequence them to fit our optimized workflow. We're defining waste as disruptions to flow and defining the problems as those things we need to remove in order to accelerate flow. In this way, uncontrolled inventories become obvious, as do product defects and poorly maintained tools. For example, if we, through our seeing exercise or direct observation, see a machine with a stack of parts behind it, it probably indicates the machine reliability is an issue, or perhaps poor quality is an issue. Put a visual management plan together once you've finished your scanning, showing where standard work instructions need to be located, where training matrices are needed, where production schedules are needed, where necessary tools, materials, and equipment need to be. Visually countermeasure things that negatively impact productivity and safety. Identify key process control points like flow, equipment, supplies to ensure proper performance. Where is flow disrupted? What type of tool is needed? Where's the placement of the tools and the type of supplies? Where do we need visual controls? What's the frequency with which we should be checking items? Where do we need labeling? What form should be used? And where do we post data? And where do we have common standards that can be established for equipment and process improvement, like air pressure settings, equipment speed, fluid levels, amount of inventory on hand, when and where to take corrective action, etc. And in the spirit of visual management, once we've established the baseline for optimizing our flow, the vision of what we want it to be, we can visually identify the cause of process issues and mount it where everybody can see it. We can establish a work area that is visually controlled. We can facilitate communication now between supervisors, employees, and coaches. We can motivate the frontline employees and encourage them to continually develop their skills. We can train employees to reassess situations and consider various approaches to improvement. So once we have seen, we're going to move on to sorting. Sorting is identifying the needed and not needed items based on our optimized workflow vision that we've created. We want to remove items that aren't needed and list what and how much and minimize quantities. We don't need to be high tech. In this particular case, we've simply sorted all of our materials using sticky notes. One sticky note indicates items not used in the past year, and we've decided that the action is to remove it to a holding areas. Items used only once in the last 6 months will be stored away from the workplace. Items used within the last 6 months but infrequently will be stored in a central place in the work area. And items used frequently, weekly or every day or hourly, will be stored in the work area close at hand. By sorting, we should be tagging every item in the area and creating a holding area to hold the trash and recycle bins full of the stuff that we've decided we don't need. For assigned areas, ask each team member to walk through their assigned areas and physically touch each item and identify if it's needed or not needed, if it needs repair, if it's in unsafe condition. And it's always in context with our optimized flow plan that we identify, tag, and separate all the items we touch. We can flip chart when we're doing that, sources of abnormal conditions, record oil leaks, safety hazards, and equipment repair. For each assigned area, individuals should clean the equipment and tools, the supplies and workspace, identify sources of dirt and spills and leak and mess. We should tag equipment to identify these sources. Think of ways to maintain cleanliness and look for ways to prevent reoccurrence. Things like splash shields, repair leaks, repair hoses. Determine the daily cleaning responsibilities. What's the schedule and assignments for cleaning? And flip chart and post in the work area or on a communications board. We want to complete the cleaning and painting as much as we can and put in place use mess prevention tactics and agree upon the defined performance indicators. This all starts with sorting our area. Once we've sorted it, we want to organize it as based on the flow we've defined. Organize each workstation, identify key tools and supplies, and determine the location for each item and the amounts required. This is why you do 4S. Pick smart tools. Build what you need as countermeasures. Finalize the workspace layout, the tools and supplies. Use PowerPoint templates if required, or cardboard to model the area. Use a flip chart to model or sketch out how we want it to look. This is all about discipline and flexibility, not bureaucracy. And again, this is accelerated considerably if you have access and nearby products like Rhonda's Sign Shop. We want to outline materials and supplies. Know where common areas, common production areas and safety zones are, where tools, jigs, and dies reside. And we always want to arrange for quick retrieval and make it easy. Outlines and developing shadow boards are classical examples of trying to sort the area. We want to outline locations on the floor or outline locations in the area. We want to label needed items and label areas. If it belongs there, it needs a home. This is not about outlining where the stapler goes on the desk. It's about a list or a bill of material that has a stapler on it and how to replenish staples from the storeroom and how they get replenished. Process is not getting trapped into process silly bureaucracy. They should be natural, our processes, and built into people's natural workflows. We don't have to be highly attentive to detail when detail is not needed. What we're looking for is a situation in our visual management organization that results in rapid, effective decision-making and elimination of wasted time. We should always require and determine the amount or the quantities that are needed in each location. The point here is that there's no point in attempting to plan an unreliable process. Storing items here in this example of a Kanban is of no use if our process is not reliable and stable. And finally, we want to maintain our areas. We want to be able to expose variances so we can know normal from abnormal. So we need procedures in our organization for inspections, for cleaning areas and equipment, corrective action so abnormal conditions are highlighted. Where do you need visual controls? Who and how are you doing daily inspections and daily cleaning? Identify the key points to check in order to ensure everything is properly functioning. Determine what items to be checked to ensure proper process and equipment performance, that is, equipment reliability. And again, air pressure, fluid levels, inventory levels, lubrication points, bolts, incoming orders, faxes, copier paper size. There is no detail that's not going to be effective in making our area less waste-free and more optimizing the flow. We want to determine acceptable performance, determine corresponding visual indicators and controls. We want to mark equipment and controls and conduct daily cleaning and inspections. We want to identify corresponding gauges, control charts, check sheets, diagrams, overlays, calibers used, everything we need to measure the effectiveness of the process. And in maintain, we also need a way of replenishing parts. We need to determine how to visually indicate the current condition for quick identification with temperature-sensitive labels, see-through panels, correct positions being outlined, color coding, and of course it's critical in this maintenance exercise to involve the maintenance department. Next, we want to document the workflow, the work instructions, and the standard work. We want to display work methods that use the best combination of people, machines, and materials. We want to set up where defects have occurred and be visible to display defective items. Error prevention boards designed to remove and reduce human error, for example. Work instructions, quality control, process, material handling, preventative maintenance, inspections, packaging, storage, shipping, invoicing. All of these things need detailed work instructions and standard work. They are needed to train members in how to perform standards, and as such should be training documents. Standard work is all about reliable methods. If there's no standard, how do you know what or who is right? How do you know it's fit for purpose? How do we transfer the knowledge to others? Here we need checklists, visual controls, photographs, flow charts, mistake proofing, worksheets, forms, even videos or e-learning YouTube videos become effective in creating our standard work. And of course, we want to measure our standard work through level scheduling and inventory management. Production management boards indicate the current conditions on production lines, production results, operating conditions, and the cause for stopped lines. We want to make visible the now status of production, often called run-at-rate charts. And we want to use Kanban to make visible variations in production. An empty Kanban is a sure sign of excessive production runs. And we want to use hijunkas or visual planning boards or boxes to level the variety and volume of items produced over a period of time. In this particular slide, we see a hijunka, a visual planning board used to level the variety and volume of items produced over a period of time. By using such a board, we avoid mura, the waste of unevenness, and muri, the waste of overstressing of people and equipment, and of course our classical muda, the operational waste driven by batch and queuing. The board allows us to correctly sequence our production orders and ensure that overcapacity situations are detected and contained in order to maintain a reliable supply of the product being produced. Use for maintenance work orders can also be established on hijunka or scheduling board. Work instructions for maintenance to put their request forms or their tickets. In a make-to-order business, the hijunka shows the next available to promise production sheet slot. In a make-to-stock business, the hijunka is used to level load production. The tool is used to determine the min and max production rate. In a machine-paced process, the rate may be fixed and the operator hours adjusted to meet the tack. In a labor-paced process, standard work and line balancing templates will determine division of labor and run at rate as labor is flexed to meet tack time. In this particular case, on the left, we have a one-week horizon. We have no finished goods. Our order cars are sized in 2-hour batches, and we're running about 20 SKUs. The components are pulled from an upstream fabrication supermarket, and they're shipped to a downstream supermarket. Inventory management indicates min and max locations, tells us how to handle materials, and allows us to expose defects through Kanban. The Kanban boards here authorize us to produce and move more parts of assemblies and visually control the flow of products through the process. They set limits on inventory of WIP allowed in the area. A Kanban is a signal that authorizes production or purchase when required. This gives us an adaptive, real-time, self-correcting planning system that automatically controls our inventory. But most important, Kanban is the most powerful continuous improvement opportunity if we learn to practice one less. Cards can be used to pull from upstream, from the cell, or from the vendor, with all the required information of standard work to operate. It can be a two-bin system used to pull from central stores or for direct vendor restocking, often to present right-sized parts supply to our assembly cell. It can be manifested in flow lanes, visual management of high-moving stock. In this particular case, inventory management is designed for 18 terms per annum on 80% of the finished goods, all visually. Prior to the visual installation of this green light indicating the movement of parts, they only had 2 turns per annum. They've also eliminated all racking and eliminated 14 miles per week of forklift traffic. In summary, we want our processes to be identified as to what we optimally want it to look like. We need to document it so that we can teach, and we need to measure it so we can problem solve variances. Always keep in mind the ultimate objective of performance improvement, of safety all the way through operating expense. In our next module, we'll look at visual management as a method to expose hidden problems and waste and lead to anchoring that process with standard work. As we move toward using visual management installations as a natural problem-solving framework for continuous improvement, employees begin to take initiative to remove the disruptions to flow, and we move to improvement. One final note. It is critical that all the hardware required to translate the thoughtware visual management we are sharing in these modules is readily available. When an employee has an idea of what or how a visual management tool or technique will enhance performance, we need to set that implementation in place immediately. And having an in-house shop sign, like this one offered by Rhonda's Visual Workplace, I think is a necessary starting point. I thank you. And I'll now turn it back to Rhonda to field any questions.